now, in partnership with the Chicago Tribune, CLTV News presents your weekly guide to food, fitness, and nutrition, from restaurants to recipes. This is Good Eating.
Winner of the 1998 James Beard Award, for the third straight year, the best local TV cooking show in the nation.
Coming up on today's show, we continue our occasional series on some of the American originals by taking a closer look at the plight of wild salmon. From a traditional Native American preparation to some modern interpretations, we'll see how salmon has defined the people of the Pacific Northwest. The chef of a well-known Portland area restaurant shows me how to make an emu-style salmon, complete with locally made hazelnut oil. William Rice selects his wine of the week, a lush Barbera from Napa Valley. Plus, Cheap eats along Divina Avenue on the city's far north side for some exquisite Indian food at Tiffin. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the show this weekend. I'm Steve Dolinsky. We're on the road this week in Oregon, continuing our series on American originals. Over the last few months, we've told you about things like Carolina barbecue, the origins of Cobb salad, even chicken fried steak. Well, today we're in Oregon for a couple of reasons. One, the natural beauty here. It's incredible. The waterfalls, even the mountains. Just take a look at Mount Hood behind me. But we're also going to take a closer look at salmon. It's one of the region's favorite foods with a long and colorful past. Well, there's no question the number of wild salmon swimming through the Columbia River has declined over the last 100 or so years. One thing that hasn't changed, however, is the method for preparing it. Now, today we're going to take a closer look at the traditional as well as the modern way of preparing this sacred fish.
Once it starts cooking, it's going to slide. So that's why you need to keep a tail hanging over there.
For as long as Lucinda Green can remember, the wild salmon swimming up the Columbia River have been considered much more than just food.
When we work with him, to us it's a living being, and we have to give the thanks to him for allowing us to use him.
As a little girl growing up on the Warm Springs Reservation, Green remembers watching her mother skewer or kite whole salmons after the men in the tribe had caught them from the nearby Columbia River Gorge. For centuries, elaborate fish ladders or platforms were built over the edges of waterfalls as patient fishermen waited with long nets to scoop up the salmon as they migrated back upriver to their birthplace. Once the fish were brought back to the reservation, women were expected to prepare them over giant open fires, seasoning them only with the smoke of the indigenous wood they used from a nearby forest.
I don't put any kind of seasoning on it. All the seasoning I use is the smoke from the alder wood.
Green carries on the tradition for her family and the occasional tourist group, hoping that by doing so, she passes on the tradition to her children.
It's not only a food, it means something very spiritual to us. And so we respect it, so it nourishes our body and our mind and our spirit.
This part of Oregon, less than an hour east of Portland, is truly God's country. Waterfalls dot the landscape, and if you look closely, you'll find an occasional pool of baby salmon waiting to swim downstream to the ocean. One of the best ways to take in the scenery is to drive along the Columbia River Gorge Historic Highway. As you head west along the Columbia River Gorge Historic Highway, you'll encounter a number of majestic waterfalls, the most popular of which is here at Multnomah Falls, about 20 miles east of Portland. It's easy for tourists to take in the fabulous scenery, watching the mighty Columbia cut its path through Oregon and Washington, but just about every Native American living in the area will tell you the scenery has slowly changed over the years. Several dams, like this one at Bonneville, now control the flow of the river, and while they generate plenty of hydroelectric power, they also make the salmon's trip upriver extremely difficult. Here's how it works. Mature salmon lay their eggs in the rivers and then they die. Those little eggs become little salmon, which swim through the streams, the rivers, and into the ocean, where they eventually mature. After about 2 to 4 years, those mature salmon will instinctively swim back upstream so they can spawn their eggs and then die, and the process begins again. The problem that environmentalists say, unlike 100 years ago when the salmon just had natural predators to worry about, these days they've got to worry about man-made structures like dams which produce hydroelectric power on the Columbia River. Here at Bonneville Dam, for example, the salmon have to swim up these ladders, as they're called, and into a pen where they're counted. Once they're counted, they swim through a series of cement mazes and then onto their birthplace upriver. These are one of the man-made problems that environmentalists say are causing the demise of the wild salmon.
There were great salmon runs up until less than a century ago.
Chet Orloff is the director of the Oregon History Center. He says despite more than 10,000 years as a culinary and spiritual icon to the native people of the Pacific Northwest, the last 100 years have put enormous stress on the once plentiful wild salmon.
For the last century, you've seen this depletion of the runs. You've seen a competition between the corporate and the sport, the fishermen, and then of course this great competition between the tribes and the commercial fishermen.
Fisheries have been set up along the river to stem the losses, but farm raising is also proving to be a difficult fight for the salmon.
At each stage, they not only have to fight their way up the fish ladders, but then they're also, because of the ecology that's been created by the dams, there are competing fish that attack the young fish that are coming downstream, as well as the weakened fish that are trying to swim back to their nesting grounds.
The flesh is in great shape. There's no bruises, there's no gaff marks.
In downtown Portland, Chef Greg Higgins uses only wild salmon in his namesake restaurant. He says farm raising devalues the worth of the wild product.
If there's too easy access to the farm-raised salmon, we forget about how important the wild-raised salmon is. And they're not only important as a historical thing, a cultural issue, but they're important because they're a barometer of our relationship to our environment. Our usage here is to show people that, number one, there's a huge difference between farm-raised fish and wild fish in flavor, texture, and healthful benefits and whatnot, but also so that they take that knowledge and apply it to the fact that they want to pay attention to protect that resource.
A standard dish at the restaurant might be a pan-roasted salmon served with heirloom potatoes and pea shoots in a fish-based corn broth with roasted yellow tomatoes. Across town at Jake's, the oldest restaurant in town, Chef Marcel Lahsene planks salmon on slabs of northwestern cedar, imparting the natural flavors of the wood. The McCormick and Schmidt Company, which owns Jake's, serves the same dish in its Chicago location on Rush Street. Another Chicago favorite, Wildfire, uses a modern machine to get the same results. In this case, brushing oak planks of wood with oil before placing onto a high-tech rotisserie.
We really try to kind of go old school and look back and try to recreate dishes and not try to reinvent the wheel.
Back in Oregon, Lucinda Green says the old-school method of appeasement hasn't paid off. Court-mandated tribal fishing rights and dam construction have forced her people to put their faith in Washington, D.C. lobbyists, a battle being waged thousands of miles away from her sacred icon.
I do a lot of praying and thinking, you know, and just pray that we'll get the salmon back.
Well, just as breathtaking as wild salmon can be, no trip to Portland will be complete without a visit to Piddock Mansion, perched high atop the city. The views from up here are just incredible. Well, coming up next on this edition of Good Eating, we're going to go back to one of those local restaurants in Portland, where the chef is going to show me how to make an emu-style salmon. It's a very traditional Native American preparation, and believe me, it's a lot easier than it looks. Then later in the show, a Health Watch report on antioxidants. Bob Condor has some good advice. Plus, we'll tell you about William Rice's Wine of the Week pick, an Italian Barbera that comes from Napa Valley of all places. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. We've moved into the Westmoreland neighborhood here in Portland, which has gone through a renaissance of sorts the last few years. Now the streets are lined with funky shops and great restaurants. One of them is Fiddlehead's. Now, the menu here focuses on food of the Americas, with a strong emphasis on Native American cuisine. One of the reasons is the chef's wife is part Chippewa Cree Assiniboine. Let's go inside and see what he's working on. Fernando Divina is the chef and owner of Fiddlehead's here in Portland. And chef, thanks for having us in your kitchen today. We appreciate it.
Welcome. Thanks for coming to Portland.
You're going to show us how to make something called emu-style salmon today. What is emu-style?
Emu-style is after the Coast Salish tribes. They cook with a method of wrapping their foods and then retrieving them, burying them first rather, and then retrieving them from the fire. And we're interpreting it in a contemporary way by wrapping the salmon with leek and with sea beans and then steaming them. And we've got the chips going right now. They're smoking nicely. I will top them a little bit. I'm using a mix of Oregon Mountain Mahogany apple and cherry wood here.
So people in Chicago could use apple or cherry wood.
Apple or cherry. Hickory actually produces a nutty flavor, but that works as well.
And you just put this on your grill, under your grill?
If you're doing it at home, you would do it right on top of your coals, your coals that were fully ignited, and then let the smoke begin.
Okay, and you want to do kind of an indirect grilling?
Yes, I'm using leeks and sea beans. The Coast Salish would have used ironwood or seaweed, and I'm going to put these on here. And this helps keep the fish very moist, and it also gives over its salt and its flavor of the sea. So I've got smoke, and now I've got some sea beans and the leek to help the salmon keep its moisture.
So now we have the fish. Now this is a steelhead?
This is steelhead. Steelhead is a uniquely West Coast fish. This has been taken from about an 8-pound fish live whole weight. I've removed the pin bones from the upper area after it's been filleted. You can have that done by your
the fishmonger?
By your fishmonger.
I always have them do that.
Certainly.
Makes it much easier.
That makes it much easier at home.
So you've just cut a little strip off.
Cut a piece off,
Okay.
and the smaller the pieces and the more even the cut, the more even it'll cook.
And this is a leek.
This is a leek leave, and we like to serve this at the restaurant here. We serve the white part of the leek with a gratin. That's accompanies the salmon. Seems to be a perfect foil for it. And then we use the upper part for the this wrapping process. So I'll just
your little salmon package.
Right, kind of a tamal, if you will.
So people in Chicago who maybe can't find steelhead could just ask for regular salmon?
Salmon, Chinook salmon works very well for this. Coho, in fact, all the varieties. A silver bright might be a little bit too lean for this preparation. And if they're doing it at home and they're using just leeks, they might just place the fish on, place the leeks down and forego the tying, and cover the fish with leeks after it's been placed over the grill. Hazelnut oil is just made by steeping hazelnuts in the extracted oil to pronounce the flavor. You can buy hazelnut oil that's prefabricated. Sure. We steep our own here.
So it's been about 10 minutes, and during the cooking process you covered this. Why don't you explain why you should cover this?
Okay. If you're using a barbecue cooker at home, you'll want to cover it with a tight-fitting lid. That just helps keep the smoke in and helps keep the heat even.
Okay.
Because you've wrapped it with the leaves, it's not essential. And if you wanted to tint it with foil, you could do that. But I think we're just about there.
Oh, they look beautiful.
You can tell that the color's changed a little bit, and you can see that there's been a little bit of a coagulation at the top here to indicate that it's done. Okay. I like to pull the salmon when it's just underdone, so that by the time I plate it and that it's consumed, actually, it's just perfectly cooked. We're serving it with its own roe. This has just been lightly salted. It's a mallow salt preparation, lightly salted.
So that gives it a little bit of salt counteract.
That helps flavor it. In our mind, it's one of those simple, perfect marriages of flavors because it's of itself.
And to finish it off, some hazelnut
A
oil.
little hazelnut oil, buckskin cake, and we're ready to go.
Looks just beautiful. Fernando Divina, chef at Fiddleheads, thanks for showing us how to make it today.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Oh, looks and smells wonderful. Now, a copy of this emu-style salmon is going to be printed in this week's Good Eating section. It's going to be modified a bit so everybody at home can make it. If you want to get a copy, just pick it up this Wednesday, or give us a call and we'll send a free copy out to you. Just dial 630-368-CLTV. That's 368-2588. Please be sure to specify the emu salmon recipe. Now, if the voicemail is full, just call us back first thing Monday morning. You can also contact us on the web at cltv.com/goodeating. Coming up next on this edition of Good Eating, Bob Condor tells us about antioxidants and what you can do to use them safely. William Rice profiles an affordable domestic Barbera from California's Napa Valley. Plus, cheap eats on the far north side of the city, where the wonderful aromas and rich flavors of authentic northern Indian cuisine comes together at Tiffin along Devon Avenue. Stay with us. Welcome back to the show, everybody. One of the dietary supplements you're likely to hear about this year is antioxidants. Proponents say they can help with everything from body fat to improve vision. But experts say use caution before considering a substantial dose. Too much of a good thing can be harmful, they say. For example, There's a vitamin C controversy going on, with officials saying even taking 500 milligrams a day can lead to some health problems. Also, fat antioxidants like alpha-lipoic acid are being touted as body fat regulators. The consensus seems to be if something is proven to be beneficial, you need to regulate the amount you take.
But we don't really know enough to be taking mega doses of any of these particular vitamins. This time of year, maybe a little extra vitamin C in your diet or supplementing your diet is great for the cold and flu season. But really, to go way beyond any sort of recommended amounts right now isn't warranted unless you're working with an expert that really can help you in your particular situation.
And as long as we're talking about what's good for you, did you know that a glass of red wine each day can help fight heart disease? Every week we introduce you to an affordable bottle with some help from the Tribune's food and wine columnist, William Rice. This week he's looking to the West Coast for an Italian grape called Barbera. He says a well-known, long-time Napa Valley producer gets high marks for combining two grapes and having the patience to wait 5 years before releasing this food-friendly wine.
Napa Valley lost one of its most respected citizens with the death last year of Louis P. Martini, son of the founder of the Louis M. Martini winery. But there was no loss in continuity because the third generation had been running the operation for some years. The family ties are reflected in a heritage collection of wines that includes the delicious Louis M. Martini 1994 Barbera, made from Lake County grapes. Following family tradition, winemaker Michael Martini first fermented Petite Syrah grapes and drew off the juice. Then he fermented the Barbera grapes on the skins of the Petite Syrah. Later, a blend was made of 75% Barbera and 25% Petite Syrah. After 5 years, this $12 wine is a mature, berry-scented beauty with both the charm of Barbera and the peppery strength of Petite Syrah. I would serve it with marinated steak, meat or vegetable lasagna, lamb stew. Have some Parmesan cheese and fruit on hand to help you finish the meal and the bottle. For good eating and drinking, this is William Rice.
Chicago's Devon Avenue has a variety of ethnic eateries, allowing diners to transport themselves to places halfway around the world. Tiffin is one such restaurant, serving authentic North Indian cuisine, and its prices are sure to please.
Indian cuisine is known for its unique aromas and depth of flavors. And at Tiffin, diners should be prepared to expect one of the most authentic North Indian experiences in the city.
It makes a big difference in the flavoring. Like North Indian cooking has more creams and the flavors are more rich in the North Indian cooking. But in South Indian cooking, you have more coconut based and a lot of lentils being used.
Open for both lunch and dinner, Tiffin prepares a daily buffet bursting with Indian delicacies.
It lets people who haven't tried Indian food try a variety of different things. And you know, you can taste it. We change the buffet every day. So you've got, every day if you come by, there's another on the weekdays there's about 8 different items, and the weekend there's about 20.
The assorted appetizer plate is one way to taste several items without hitting the buffet line. For $6.95, you'll get a sampling of these puff pastries known as samosas, pakoras or deep-fried vegetables, seekh kebab, and chicken tikka. Meat and poultry preparations include the Goin lamb vindaloo for $9.95. It's actually a West Coast specialty. It combines 2 types of lamb marinated in aged vinegar and chilies and garnished with potatoes. The chicken plate, or murg mazadar, is a specialty of the house. In it, boneless white meat is sautéed with a thick masala sauce for $9.50. Vegetarians can opt for the Guru's Delight, it's $8.95, or the masala dosai, which looks more like a large pancake, it's $7.95. Out of a possible 4, the Chicago Tribune gives Tiffin 3 forks. You can find it at 2536 West Devon in Chicago. Their phone is 773-338-2143. For good eating, I'm Bill Mahler.
I love Indian food. Well, that is all the time we have for this week's show, everybody, but be sure to join us next Sunday as we go to the heart of Turkish food, discovering the nuances of the culture and cuisine. We'll also visit a local Turkish restaurant to find out what they're serving in Chicago. Alicia shows us how to make a delicious turkey-inspired dish of stuffed chicken breasts with pistachios and currants. Plus, cheap eats with a little bit of Vietnam, Thailand, and China at Pan Asia in Wrigleyville. Well, thanks again for watching, everybody. I'm Steve Dolinsky. Have a great weekend, and until next time, here's wishing you good eating. Bye.